talk about, I'll start with just the general questions, your priorities for the 2022 legislative year.
2022 priorities are going to build on our priorities from last year, which is to lead with equity and recognize that the pandemic is still impacting people, and it's impacting those that were suffering worst and most significantly before. So we need to make sure that we're leading with equity as we address continued COVID recovery for small businesses, for Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities, and for those that are unhoused and suffering from mental health and addictions. That will continue to be about prioritizing our investments in those areas. I think the other piece is that has been for me is that transportation can be a key strategy for how we address equity, how we address climate, how do we address making sure that we're creating pathways and roadways that get people, goods, and ideas moved, or to be able to use those same right-of-ways to increase access to broadband so people can stay in their communities and continue to access our economy and opportunity. That will be another piece. I think a third is really making sure that when we think about public safety, that we recognize our badged officers are key partners in that, but they're not the only ones, and that we need to create and invest in teams that are centered around community public safety. That means making sure there's 3 small bills. One is to build on and tweak work that had been done that continues to be led by Representative Johnson, Goodman, Peterson, and Dingra, to clarify badged officers' roles in crisis response. But there's 3 little bills that I'm working on, and 2 that are there from last year. Senate Bill 5129, which is about making sure that we address prevention and support and don't criminalize young people that are using tobacco products. And so this aligns and builds on work that had been done to increase the age to 21 for tobacco use. So that's Senate Bill 5129. Senate Bill 5354 is about making sure that in our cities, particularly large events, where we currently use badged officers to do traffic mitigation, they're usually doing overtime to do that. And so we have professional flaggers that can do that work. We need to just clarify at the state level that that is allowed for any city that wants to do that. And so that is a little bill that then will allow for badged officers to be available for other more high priority issues. And the third is just a bill we had passed that needs to be extended because of the pandemic deadline. It was delayed in implementation, but is looking at using cameras in strategic ways, protecting and respecting people's rights to privacy, but to use that for traffic enforcement, whether it's around the West Seattle Bridge, bus rapid transit, or key intersections, to make sure that, again, we're using our resources more effectively and making sure our professionals are able to respond to folks. So those would be 3 big priorities that I continue to do. And I think kind of the fourth is related to the first, is just making sure that we are adjusting our budgets to align for the values and investments that we need. So continue to make sure the child care infrastructure that we did last year has the right investments and supports to be implemented. The Environmental Justice Bill, the HEAL Act, that was my big bill last year. Again, making sure our people have the right resources to actually implement. And I think that will be across the board when we're looking at counselors, when we're looking at our education system, is making sure that what we said were our priorities and policy, that we have our budget aligning with that.